Welcome everyone to Daniel's History Talk podcast, and this is today's guest, Wilson. Hey guys, I'm Wilson. Two pandemics centuries apart, both devastating in their own right, but what can the Black Death and COVID-19 teach us about the impact of pandemics on society and how to better prepare for the future? Yes, everyone, today we're going to talk about the relationship between the Black Death and COVID-19, the two pandemics that have had a significant impact on the world. Ooh! Yes, the Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, swept across Europe in the 14th century, killing millions of people. And now, centuries later, we are facing another pandemic, COVID-19. Both diseases have caused massive social and economic consequences, but there are also crucial differences between them. We'll be exploring these differences and what they can teach us about pandemics and how to prevent their spread. It's essential to understand the similarities and differences between these two pandemics so we can learn from history and be better prepared for the future. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the fascinating relationship between the Black Death and COVID-19. Wilson, why don't you start off? Sure, Daniel. So, as you all know, the Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, was a pandemic that occurred in the 14th century, and it's interesting to see how history repeats itself. That's right, it's estimated that the Black Death killed up to 200 million people according to Britannica Encyclopedia. And according to the report from CDC, the bubonic plague was created by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, which was transmitted to humans through flea bites, which those flea bites come from rats. Similarly, another report from it says that COVID-19 is caused by a virus called SARS-CoV-2, which is transmitted through respiratory droplets, currently predicted as raccoons, sent to bats, pigs, etc., and finally, humans. Yeah, both diseases have had a significant impact on the world. During the Black Death, there were massive social and economic consequences, just like during the COVID-19 pandemic. Then Wilson, how do you think these viruses had came to? Well, from the drawing that has been drawn during the 14th century siege of Kaffa, it shows that Mongolians had been infected through the virus, and they were shooting the dead bodies that was infected by the virus to the enemy's territory. Well, that's scary. Yeah, they were doing that because they were tired of the long-time war situation, and this was the first bioweapon used in war in human history. Wow, that's quite shocking news. Any other difference you know? There are also differences between the two pandemics. For example, the Black Death had a much higher mortality rate, with estimates ranging from 30% to 60% of the population. In contrast, COVID-19 has a mortality rate of around 2% according to WHO. Another difference is that we have more advanced medical technology and knowledge today. We know more about how viruses work and how to prevent their spread. That's true. During the Black Death, people had very little understanding of how disease was transmitted, so they had no idea how to prevent the spread. Yes. However, actually, during the Black Death, governments relied on more extreme measures like quarantine and isolation, similar to what we've seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. But there are also differences. For example, during the Black Death, there was a lot of misinformation and superstition, which led to persecution of certain groups like Jews and lepers, according to National Geographic. And because of that, even some of those religious people thought that this Black Death was a punishment of God and whipped themselves to get blessed by God. In contrast, during COVID-19, we have more access to accurate information, which has helped to prevent discrimination. Wow! I think cults are getting famous when a deadly virus spreads, just like the Shincheonji cult incident happened in 2020. I agree. Another difference is that according to Life Science, during the Black Death, governments didn't have the resources or infrastructure to provide medical care or support to those affected by the disease. But during COVID-19, government has been able to provide more resources such as vaccines and medical equipment to help combat the pandemic. However, there have also been criticisms of how governments have responded to COVID-19, with some arguing that they haven't done enough to address the social and economic impacts of the pandemic. That's true. There have been concerns about the unequal impact of the pandemic, with the marginalized communities and low-income individuals being disproportionately affected. Overall, it's clear that there are similarities and differences between how governments have responded to the Black Death and COVID-19. But what's most important is that we continue to learn from history and work towards creating better systems for preventing and responding to pandemics. That's right, Wilson. It's crucial that we continue to prioritize science-based policies and provide support to those who are most affected by these crises. I think it's important to remember that the Black Death was still devastating for the people who lived through it. And we are still living through this COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a considerable impact on our lives. It's essential to learn from history so that we can be better prepared for future pandemics. Absolutely, and it's also important to continue practicing the public health measures that can be put in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19, like wearing masks and practicing social distancing. And getting vaccinated, of course. Vaccines have been instrumental in reducing the severity of the pandemic. That's a great point, Daniel. Well, I guess some people think vaccination is a scam, but you know what I'm saying, right? Yes, I know, like people don't believe if vaccines work or not. Aha. And that concludes our podcast on the relationship between the Black Death and COVID 19. We hope that you have gained some valuable insights into the similarities and differences between these two pandemics and how governments have responded to them. Remember, pandemics have occurred throughout history, and it's essential to learn from the past so that we can be better prepared for the future. Let's continue to prioritize science-based policies, support those who are most affected, and work together to overcome this crisis. And mostly, remember how much people have died in Black Death, and do not repeat these histories again. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you in our next episode. Bye, guys.